Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video. I'm myself, Jonathan MS Pierce. This is Ukraine War News Update, second part there for the 27th of June. This is a military aid video, and we're going to start with the European Commission intending to continue providing economic and financial support to Ukraine. Ready to finance 11 billion euros this year under the G7 loan initiative. That's the loans underwritten by the frozen Russian asset profits, I believe. That's according to Ursula von der Leyen. So ready to finance 11 billion euros this year. I don't know, I don't know how careful Max 25 is being here with wording and whatnot, how much has already been given from this initiative, how much more will be given, what the total will be for this year, so on and so forth. So I don't know whether that definitely is another 11 billion this year. But I also don't know about this. So Visioner here saying the European Union has overcome Hungary's veto and approved 30.6 billion euros in financial aid for Ukraine this year. There are all these different sets of aid that different aspects of the EU are trying to give to Ukraine, and there was the big package that was some time back that the Europeans were wanting to give, the EU was wanting to give to Ukraine, and Hungary vetoed it, and then it's all trying to get around the Hungarian vetoes, and that also includes the sanctions, the 18th sanctions package that both Hungary and I think Slovakia have actually been difficult over, and they seem to have vetoed. But I'm hearing from Macron just now that is back on track, or they're hoping to get that over the line. So I'll have to wait and see about that. It's not like I've got a telephone line with Macron, though, I have to say. But anyway, could be some good news in terms of funding there from the EU. Now, this year, Denmark will allocate 1.26 billion euros in support of the production of long-range drones in Ukraine, according to President Zelensky. That might well be part of that co-production where they're making in Ukraine and in Denmark, in this case, producing Ukrainian drones in Denmark, localization going that direction. Talked about that quite a lot yesterday. Right, Macron has made it abundantly clear that a second batch of Mirage 2005s were transferred to Ukraine, and even suggested that new Ukrainian pilots are being trained to fly the Mirage 2000s. So that's good news. I don't know how many Mirages that means that Ukraine has. So initially sort of thoughts of 3 went, I think, didn't they, originally, and then thought that there were 6, and then there were claims that it could go up to, say, 24. That'd be like the maximum amount of Mirages they could possibly get out of France, I think. That was the general hope. But the realistic number is, well, I don't know. If they've had a second tranche of these, second delivery of these, and I just don't know. There are no numbers attached there. It could be like a dozen Mirages. That'd be fantastic, wouldn't it, if they had those operational? Of course, they are saying that they need basically, I don't know, somewhere around 160 to 200 operational jets. That as well, it would be preferable if they were more modern jets than the ones they were previously operating, the older Sukhois and MiGs. So yeah, they could get some more MiGs from Poland, but really they want F-16s, Gripen and Mirages. If they could operate that many aircraft, then goodness me, they would be really challenging the Russians along the front line there. Right, we hear also that the Dutch yesterday donated 18 F-16s to Romania for €1. The Netherlands has transferred 18 F-16 fighter jets to Romania to be used at the training centre there, which already trains pilots from Ukraine, Bulgaria, Slovakia and others. Romania now operates 70 plus of these F-16s. So that's incredible from the Dutch. Again, Dutch really coming up the goods. Now, Australia's announced that they will dispatch an AWACS early warning aircraft, the E-7 Wedgetail, to support the system of reconnaissance and early response to potential threats in Poland and the region. Now, they had previously had one out there. I thought that it was still out there. Maybe they'd recalled the Wedgetail and then sending it back out again. I'm not really sure. So they might have multiple of these aircraft out there helping. This all really helps. Yes, it's kind of a NATO thing to help get a sense of what's going on in the airspace all in that region. But a lot of these planes fly out to, I know the British one actually, which flies all the way from the UK, it's not based out there, so it flies on these big missions from the UK flies out over the Black Sea, gets as far as even like Crimea, really pushing the boundaries. And then the Russian jets come up and say, bugger off. And this accompanied by, so that'll be accompanied by 2 Eurofighter Typhoons that will be based in Romania. They join our AWACS plane as it comes out, and then does its thing, and then goes back, drops off the 2 short range jets, and then flies all the way back to the UK. Here it appears that there's an Australian plane that's been offered for that kind of business as well, although it talks about sort of Poland there. But yeah. Okay, Trump signals support for sending more Patriot missiles to Ukraine. So I remember I talked to you about this. He was speaking to a Ukrainian journalist from BBC Ukraine who's married to a Ukrainian soldier, and there was a bit of empathy there from Donald Trump. And he said that Ukraine does want to have the anti-missile missiles, as they call them, the Patriots, and we're going to see if we can make some available. And you can go and watch that interaction variously online. There she is talking to Trump, and Trump says his piece, which has got people quite excited that Trump might actually go back and either give the green light for sales to Ukraine or might try and get Patriots from other places. Then War Monitor said this yesterday, but not seen this anywhere else. Massive pinch of salt. US will transfer 5 Patriot systems to Ukraine from Israel after repair. Unconfirmed report from Ukrainian media. Totally unconfirmed, but that's what we were hoping originally. They had all these PAC-2 Patriot batteries from Israel that are now rendered obsolete due to them using their own better missile systems, the Arrow and the David Sling, etc., etc. They don't need these Patriot PAC-2s, although they can't take down ballistic missiles. They are still incredibly useful for taking down lots of other threats. But yeah, different claims. There was a claim from the ambassador to say that there are multiple systems. He said systems out in Ukraine. Then the IDF came out. The Israelis actually came out and said, no, that's not true. Then Zelensky came out and said, as a president, look, we've got one. I think, did he say we have one, but it's in the US getting refurbished, which is going to be, we've got at least one, I would have thought. There's definitely going to be an underplaying of it. So I think at the bare minimum, Ukraine have one of these at least on the way, possibly even already in Ukraine operational. They could have multiple operational, but there are more that could come. Will that happen? I don't know. We're kind of wait and see, aren't we? Military aid to Ukraine for Jeff 2146 for his spreadsheet has been updated with a tripartite class Minehunter from the Belgians, and then an Alkmaar class Minehunter from the Dutch. These have been renamed, and they are indeed, there they are. Narcissus was renamed to Mariupol, Vladingen renamed to Melitopol. So these, I presume, will not find their way to the Black Sea until the war is over, when they will do their duties in the Black Sea. The Bosphorus Straits, due to the Montreux Convention, have that closed off to both warring nations. In terms of military vessels. So yeah, they're transferring 2 Minehunters to Ukraine. The Belgians and the Dutch, a vital contribution to Black Sea security and key to safeguarding trade routes and global food supply, said Breckelmans. But again, I'm not sure they're getting through the Bosphorus Straits. Ukrainian crews and technicians were trained in record time. So they are trained on these ships already. Now, a fleet of Swedish supplied CB-90s, we've seen some video footage of these already, fast assault craft in Ukrainian services operating on the Black Sea. Sweden has delivered at least 20 of these. That's really significant, and these will help also with air defense. I presume they'll be able to take out drones. I know it looks like these have got some heavy machine guns. That doesn't give you all that much scope for shooting down drones that are now flying much higher. But I don't know whether they're going to be adapting these with any other kind of munitions, maybe the APKWS, Hydra 70 rocket systems or something like that. But they've got 20 of these, and that's pretty impressive. They do look decent boats, don't they? Now, Norway is allocating 550 million euros for Ukraine to purchase drones and unmanned technologies. The country's prime minister has said the funds will go to European and Ukrainian manufacturers. So again, hopefully from a European point of view, that money will swish around Europe, and if not, it swishes around Ukraine. We also hear that Norway will channel 5.9 million to 90 Ukrainian women's organizations over 3 years, prioritizing groups in smaller towns and remote areas that have maintained community services throughout the year. So that's really good. Norway are doing a tremendous job, aren't they? Now, the Dutch Ministry of Defense, to go back to them, has applied a contract with the German concern Rheinmetall for the supply of 20 Ermin vehicles. They'll be delivered to Ukraine in 2026, so not there for another at least half a year, which will enhance their capabilities to evacuate the wounded near the front line. So these look like pretty cool little vehicles. In fact, the Kyiv Independent talks us through what they are. So Ukraine to receive 20 of these. Here's what they can do. You can see they've actually got 6 wheels and a bit of a flatbed at the back. The light buggies provide fast maneuverable transport for wounded personnel in combat zones. Designed primarily for evacuation missions. Rheinmetall said the deliveries are expected to begin in 2026. According to them, the Ermin is a lightweight tactical system and combines the robustness of a diesel unit with many advantages of an electric drive. It's a modular system that comes in 4 configurations: 4x4 quad, 4x4 or 6x6 buggy, or unmanned ground vehicles. So interesting. So not only does it come in a 4 or 6 wheel variety, but it can also be operated remotely in an unmanned way. Interesting. The Ermin combines a diesel engine with an electric motor that allows for what Rheinmetall describes as silent move and silent watch. Has a range of up to 1,200 kilometers and can carry up to a ton. The electrical powertrain makes the Ermin almost silent. It is capable of driving up to 50 kilometers silently through heavy terrain and up to 100 kilometers on the road. So that's fantastic. So you can drive near to where you need to get to, switch it into silent electric motor mode, and then very quietly get up to where you need to get to, maybe at night time, and not be heard. The Germans have provided a bunch of motorbikes that do this as well, electric motorbikes that are designed for special forces. And the idea is that those engines are silent and incredibly quiet and allow you to operate in a more clandestine fashion. The system offers its users significant tactical advantages in avoiding enemy reconnaissance. The electrical engine can even provide charging points for soldiers out in the field. Interesting. So there you go. That came out the back of, is it the NATO announcements as well? Right, so moving on, Latvia has sent 1,300 strike drones to Ukraine as part of the International Drone Capability Coalition. So 1,300 strike drones. Thank you very much to Latvia. And Canada and the EU signed a defence pact. Now, this isn't so much to do with Ukraine per se, but it does show a greater move towards Europe by the Canadians. Mark Carney is really warming up that relationship in light of Trump saying that he wants Canada to be the US's 51st state. And actually, this has pushed Canada towards Europe, and doing what they did is a defense pact ahead of the NATO meeting. That means that Canada can access that $150 billion readiness 2030, the kind of rearm Europe. The EU pledged to allow $150 billion to be cheaply borrowed, and then that can go to predominantly European or EU entities. But the UK did a trade deal with the EU, so we could access that, and it looks like Canada has done the same. The deal is designed to allow Canada to be part of the EU defence development process, share funding and development costs, work to aid Ukraine, and improve transatlantic cooperation between Canada and the EU. This is a major step forward for both sides. The UK is expected to complete a similar deal in the coming weeks with the EU. This is a strategic partnership across a wide spectrum of issues, from trade to security. It's a sharp break with Canada's strategic link with the US. As Prime Minister Carney made clear, it's about looking forward, not backward. I'm delighted, says the analyst. Canada and the EU have found such common ground. It's a major step towards a security architecture without the US in it. I could not be happier. So the analyst obviously not particularly happy with how things have been developing with the United States. And speaking of Canada, here's a nice little video to watch. The Canadians shake the hands of the Ukrainians that they have helped to train. I don't know if this is Operation Interflex in the UK, where it could be that Canadians are helping the training of the Ukrainians, or it could be Ukrainians over in Canada. Not 100% sure about the provenance of this video in terms of where it's at. Just trying to see if that's a British looking coach. Certainly looks like a British looking road to me. But it could be the Canadians as part of Operation Interflex there. We'll see. Or maybe we won't. Who knows? Anyway, good to see the Canadians proud of helping the Ukrainians there. Now, on to the Ukrainians helping themselves in terms of developing their own military hardware. I've already talked to you about this. I did a whole video on how it looks like Ukraine are now developing their own guided glide bombs. Ukrainian made guided aerial bomb system, which converts conventional 500 kilogram bombs into precision weapons with an extended range of up to 60 kilometers, with future versions expected to reach 80 to 100 kilometers. So that's really, sounds really good, especially if they can get up to that greater range there. These cost about $25,000, which is at least as cheap as the cheapest foreign similar bombs, but considerably cheaper than things like the AASM Hammer, although the Hammer is really good. It's got a rocket propulsion as well to help it along, and the Hammers are now looking at extending their range. They've got a new one out. I don't know if they're going to find their way to Ukraine. I would hope so, and I would have thought the French would be very interested in the Ukrainians getting hold of them and then advertising them to the wider world. But the Ukrainians making their own here is really good news. And there was talk, I reported this yesterday, there's a video that came out that claimed that Ukrainians had used their own kind of FAB type, FAB type bombs with the UPMK guidance kit on them. So I presume that's exactly this, but I don't know yet. Okay, so Jimmy Russian says a lot of Russian cities will suddenly become extremely unsafe if Ukraine can produce these at scale and decides to respond to Russian bombing of Ukrainian cities like Sumy, Kharkiv and Kherson in kind. That won't happen. The Ukrainians will not hammer Russian cities with munitions in the same way that Russia does that to Ukraine, because they're very wary of upsetting international supporters of Ukraine, and B, it's just a bit of a waste of scarce munition that they need to really be focusing on hitting military targets, and and the moral aspect as well, of course, that I'd hope that Ukrainians wouldn't do that, because it's also morally wrong so to do. Now, Ukraine is preparing a new contract for tens of thousands of deep strike drones to increase the intensity and scale of strikes, says Defense Minister Umarov. I've always find declarations like this really weird, because that should have been something that was put into place 2 years ago. Preparing a new, have they already had contracts that now come? Do you know what I mean? Like, what does this exactly mean? And I know he might well have given a bit more detail in the original statement, but this is one of Ukraine's biggest concerns, because they need to be able to hit the Shahid manufacturing facilities. Absolutely, they need to hit them. They need to hit as much as they possibly can deep into Russia, where they're storing their planes, particularly planes and drones. Absolutely at the top of the list there. But then ammunition depots and the military industrial complex, so on and so forth. So it's brilliant that's going to be happening, but I would like to see, though, that intensity and scale of strike taking place right now. The Wild Hornets drone company, or it's a non-profit organization, they are doing a great job of developing drones with the capabilities that are requested of them by the front line. They're very reactive Wild Hornets. They seem to do a really good job. Here they have designed a drone that can reach heights of 11 kilometers. What this means is that you've got the scope to have really good interceptor drones for taking out Russian reconnaissance drones. If these can reach 11 kilometers and still have really good communication to the operators below, then this gives Ukraine another string to their bow in terms of what their drones are capable of doing. I mean, that is right up there in the atmosphere, isn't it? Wow, goodness. So yeah, these sorts of drones, I mean, I presume it's an interceptor drone, are are just adding to Ukraine's what they can do, really, their capability. The GUR presented Magura W6, so we've heard of the V5 and then the V7. Here's W6, a multi-purpose complex designed for patrolling water areas, monitoring airspace, as well as for performing evacuation and logistics tasks. So pretty much bloody everything. So here we have the W6. I guess we'll get to see what that does going forward. And then talking about USVs, the Ukrainian naval drone, the Katran, received weapons capable of hitting targets at a distance of up to 100 kilometers. Militiani. When I was talking to Greg Terry on a live stream last night, I was like, I'm in quite a good place at the moment because I think the NATO summit went okay for Ukraine. You know, all the caveats will apply to that, and go and check my live stream with Greg where we talk about this at length. But I think that should give Zelensky something to be at least marginally happy about. Ukrainians doing okay in Sumy, pushing the Russians back there, and they're doing well in bringing online a whole bunch of weapons, or looking to bring online a whole bunch of weapons very soon. And that gives me some confidence that they're going to give the Russians a bloody nose. As long as they can scale up all of these things that they are building, then that's good news. I was looking earlier at a statement that's come out from, I think, someone from the 3rd Assault Brigade, saying that the Russians are massively amounting troops in both Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and he reckons they'll attack again in Sumy, and they're going to throw everything they can, and in Kharkiv as well. Literally all the main places, and the Russians are going to throw everything they can at the Ukrainians. This is a summer period. This is what you'd expect, but we possibly haven't seen it yet from the Russians, that the attack up in Sumy wasn't potentially the be-all and end-all. So I'm happy on the one hand. On the other hand, I am pretty wary. Now, Ukraine's MOD has approved the Protector. Now, I have shown you this before. I think I've shown you it driving. This is actually an unmanned vehicle, which is a damn sight larger than the normal UGVs we see. But this is a heavy unmanned ground platform by Ukrainian Armour. That's the name of the company. For use, it can carry armour, so it's been approved for use. It can carry ammo, evacuate wounded, serve as a remote combat module, or act as a mobile electronic warfare system. So you can put EW hardware on it. You can put weaponry on it, remote weaponry on it. You can put stretchers on it and try and get people out of the war zone, get them evacuated. Whatever it is, it's a multi-purpose platform, but it's much bigger. It's basically a remote controlled car, as we'd normally understand it. Not your little toy remote control car, but an actual full-on SUV remote controlled. Okay, so we're going to go on to a few other connected ideas here, and we're going to go to America, because some fascinating observations made by Colby Badwell, particularly over what weapons the US is procuring and what that looks like in terms of what their strategies are going forward. But first of all, Alex Rafoglu here says, happening now, Trump says the Ukraine crisis has also highlighted the urgency of rebuilding our defense industrial base, both in the United States and among allied nations. Now, a lot of allied nations are doing that. The US was starting to ramp up their industrial base. They've got shell manufacturing really ramped up, Pennsylvania, so on and so forth, lots of these places. But then Trump is not using appropriated monies to support Ukraine anymore, and it looks like they are definitely cutting out. There's more news again yesterday that Hegseth is cutting Ukraine out the DoD budget, and so it's interesting that Trump is saying here at the NATO summit that they need to rebuild their defense industrial base, but one of the best ways of doing that is actually by helping Ukraine. And I just hope they do that. When it comes to what they are buying, in terms of what they need in their armory, which should align with their strategy, Colby Badwell is saying, the US Air Force has moved money from the Sentinel intercontinental ballistic missile program to fund the retrofit of the jet being gifted to them by Qatar for use as Air Force One, according to Inside Defense. So this is the highly controversial $400 million freebie they're being given. It's worth supposedly $400 million, and Trump's like, well, we might as well take it. It's free playing, even though, quid pro quo. But actually, the problem is you then have to spend, I don't know, they're saying it's going to cost like $1 billion to make sure that the plane is stripped of any dubious tech it might have in it that's listening in, snooping in on the Americans. So you've got to make sure it's safe from foreign tech that is compromising. And then you've got to put on all your own specifics to make sure it can do what an Air Force One plane needs to be able to do. Secured comms equipment and all sorts of stuff. And I don't know if it gets up armored and etc., etc. And it looks like they're moving money from an intercontinental ballistic missile system procurement to do up that plane. The Air Force says that these were financial year 2024 funds that were excess to needs, but even if we accept that at face value, which we should not, why not reinvest them back into the program? So then the Air Force has said, well, actually, this is excess funds we've got from last year, so we're going to spend that on upgrading this Qatari airplane. But it's like, whoa, even if that's true, like that should still be invested in the programs you need for national security, not for some vanity project for the president. And then John Ridge and Colby. Well, Colby Badwa, again, lots of really interesting observations about what he pulls through these documents of what has been ordered by the US, what's been ordered from abroad from the US as well. The Trump administration is gambling the Standard Missile 6 production line on reconciliation passing. If it doesn't, the line shuts down. SM-6 is pretty much the United States' only fielded limited defense against maneuvering hypersonic threats. John Ridge, another kind of missile expert guy, says the Trump administration and the Department of the Navy are playing profoundly stupid budgetary games for little possible gain. So they're playing around, and you don't need to know about all the details here, but just a few more to give you a sense of what might be going on. Colby Badwa, again, the Department of Defense, AMRAAM inventory, so these are air-to-air missiles, are critically low. The US Air Force, the US Navy cuts from financial 25 AMRAAM procurement. The financial year 25 US Navy buy went from 261 to 154, and the US Air Force buy went from 462 to 290, with expected FMS, foreign military sales orders this year, still just 350. This lot will be a measly 782. Even more shocking, they expect to put just 300 FMS missiles on contract next production lot. That's compared to at least 2,900 AMRAAMs, which have been approved for foreign military sale this calendar year so far. So next year, they're selling 2,900. They're selling 300, which is down from 2,900 as it stands. And they're also procuring less for their own planes by the looks of it. Chris Owicki says, I remember when European leftists in the 1980s talked about unilateral disarmament, but never thought I'd see an American president actually doing it. Ouch. And then Colby Badwa also says the Trump administration's financial year 2026 presidential budget request is asking for just 45 precision strike missiles. These are the PrSMs that are replacing the ATACMS, right? So the ATACMS are supposed, they were the missiles that Ukraine so desperately wanted. It's like, we don't have enough of them, so we can't give you all of the ones that you want. We've got to keep them back for strategic reasons, maybe Taiwan or whatever. And so there was some thinking that concluded that they only gave the ATACMS eventually because they were getting these new PrSM, which is a replacement for the ATACMS, through production. So they were able to then give up the old stuff. But they're now only asking for 45 precision strike missiles compared to Biden's planned ask of 268. So why? So he says it's looking bleak. Why would the US armed forces go down from 268 to 45 of these weapons that are supposed to be, maybe, I don't know. I would assume the ATACMS were, albeit old now, they're pretty damned important part of the inventory. And this is their upgraded replacement, and they already seem to be phasing it out. These decisions make it look like the decisions being made by Russians and Chinese. Like, let's leave the US in the most precarious situation. another data point, says Chris Owicki, supporting the hypothesis that Trump has no intention of fighting China. Could well be a sound conclusion. Now, one small piece of good news, so Colby Badwater says, from his poring over the finer details, is that from the financial year 2026 budget request, the US Army Requirements Oversight Council has approved an increase in the Patriot Advanced Capability 3, so the PAC-3 missile segment enhancement Army acquisition objective, from 3,376 to 13,773. So what the US is doing is they are buying an absolute ton of these Patriot PAC-3 missiles. Now, will these go to Ukraine? I don't know. Is this about realizing that aerial threats are absolutely, could it be that we don't need ATACMS because we're not going to go and attack stuff, but we might well need to defend an awful lot from the aerial threats, as we can see, from ballistic missiles and maybe cruise missiles and larger drones and whatnot. Are these for the US stocks because the US are worried about those kind of threats, or are these? Is this demand on the manufacturing of these more to do with Ukraine? With, I don't know, probably not Israel because they have their own, other people that are going to be clamoring to get their hands on Patriot PAC-3s. This new goal exceeds prior procurement of all Patriot interceptors of all types to date and gives an honest assessment of the Army's true requirements given global demands on their air and missile defense assets. So could just be to replace what they have given up already. How many years to make this many? 650 a year by 2027. 15 years after that for around 10,000. Hopefully both Rheinmetall and MHI will be able to help with this though. So there is of course talk that Rheinmetall is going to be producing these in Europe. Of course, there's also production of these, I think, over in Japan too. I've already talked about this morning, but just to add it in here in the correct kind of place, there is a desire to make sure they're taking advantage of as many, of all parts of the demographic pot in Ukraine, whether it be, obviously young men are going to be top of the list, I guess, traditionally for the armed forces, young fit men who can run around in the trenches shooting people. And then you've seen older and older men, men that probably should be retired, still fighting. Then you've got maybe unfit people. You've got women, of course. And I'm not really talking about the arguments about whether women can fight on the front line, but you got to be thinking about, we need to be able to put everyone we can in Ukraine to good use. We have a lack of personnel compared to the Russians. So someone that's lost their leg in the war already. Okay, if you're saying we can't send them back to the front line, and actually there are, I think, amputees that have gone back to the front line. But assuming we can't send this person back to the front line, he's got a blade, but can he drive a vehicle? He can still actually drive a vehicle, or can he operate in a Gepard or on a mobile fire team shooting down drones with a Browning machine gun? Yep, absolutely. All right, let's get him out there. Can a woman do that? Can an older unfit man do that? Can this person do that? Can that? Where can we put all these people? And the Cartier Brigade now is hoping to change the situation with regard to manpower shortage by going to women. Ukrainian brigade turns to women in its first ever female recruitment drive. So you're starting to see this coming from particular brigades themselves, updating internal practices to better integrate women into units. So in this picture, you've got one operating a sniper rifle, a drone, and then general infantry. So women are going to play, I think, a more and more important role. And I've talked about also things like, your working, not environment, but your working hours and things like that. If women are more likely to be your primary caregiver of children, so women can't, go and fight on the front lines for 6 months, because then who's looking after the kids? Because the husband's also fighting on the front line. So the mother might operate while the kid's at school or whatever, operate a mobile fire unit during that time. and then go back, look after the kids, to do it locally. There are ways around these manpower problems. Now, talking about actually that was supposed to be in a whole different section, that last one, because now we're on sort of outside of Ukraine. There was all this talk when the US started looking like a dodgy, unreliable ally, that other nations that would otherwise buy equipment from the US might be looking elsewhere. It's a particular concern over, say, the F-35. And Portugal was one of the nations that was possibly going to look elsewhere. Canada, another one. Now, apparently, Portugal is abandoning the F-35 platform, and they're going to opt for the Rafale instead. Now, the Rafale might not have the capabilities of the F-35, but then it's looking at what you really actually need. Like, you don't always need the very best plane that money can buy, because actually you use your planes for this particular role and that particular role, and actually the Rafale does that particular role perfectly well. Thank you very much. And it's a damn sight cheaper, and it's localized, and it may be that Portugal even has more production of components for the Rafale than, I don't know, than for the F-35, all those kind of considerations. So here, Maria Schmidt says, I really applaud the decision, as we need to be independent from the United States. Hope this is a strategic turning point and other EU countries will follow. So if that is indeed true, and what was earlier rumoured, then that is a really significant move for the Portuguese. Right, okay, now on to Russia. So the Su-35 will be put aside. Iran considers buying the JT-10C fighter jets from China instead of Russian jets. Wow. So Iran, big friends of Russia, might well be, unfortunately for the Russians, eschewing the Russian military-industrial complex there in favour of the Chinese. And that could well be a pragmatic consideration, that Russia are really struggling to make stuff and get stuff to different nations who would like it. It's just they can't do it, the Russians. Like, you can order 20 Su-35s off us, but we're unable to make them because of sanctions and because actually we need them for war or whatever. And indeed, it looks like this has been the case with S-400 air defense systems. So Russia has promised India that it will deliver 2 more S-400 air defense systems. But Russia and India signed a contract for almost $5.5 billion back in 2018 for Russia to deliver 5 systems by the end of 2023. But then the war started in 2022, or this iteration of the war started in 2022, and they've been unable to fulfill the contract. Now, the first 3 systems have been delivered, but the delivery of the remaining 2 has been delayed by Russia's war with Ukraine. Now, Russia promises to deliver 1 S-400 system in 2026 and the next one in 2027. Wow, so they ordered 5 in 2018 and they're getting one of them 9 years later. That is not great. So now Russia promises to deliver those in that time frame. It's reported the S-400 system was used during the operation against Pakistan. So India's used these. They've been used in their little conflict with Pakistan that took place recently. Now, Russia is supposedly, as I mentioned several times, churning out hundreds of new T-90M tanks. Not quite sure how many they really are. There are differing numbers on this. Some people think the CIT report upon which this Euromaidan press article is based is very charitable to the Russians, that they're actually refurbishing more than they're making from scratch. But there is a claim that they are making, and this has been circulating for some time, they are making a whole bunch of stuff and they're not sending it to the front line, but they're stockpiling it in warehouses or whatever. What is the reason? If they're, 1, are they doing that? 2, why they're doing that? Is it because they are getting ready for a war against, say, NATO or conflict outside of Ukraine? Or is it that they're waiting for a massive offensive in Ukraine? They're saving those tanks for that? What are the reasons? Don't know. Russia has ramped up production of Iskander missiles thanks to imported equipment from China, Taiwan and Belarus, according to the Kyiv Independent. In the past year alone, over 700 missiles were produced, 3 times more than in 2023. So sanctions were doing a job. And now sanctions are struggling because it's all about enforcement and stopping those loopholes, closing down those loopholes. And if the US aren't really on board with, I mean, Marco Rubio said yesterday that we still got sanctions. Well, yeah, brilliant. Okay. You haven't taken any sanctions off yet, but if you're not enforcing them, they might as well not exist. Are you really actively enforcing them? Is the Treasury Department really working hard to make sure that Russia doesn't get X, Y, and Z? No. Okay, well, there's your problem. Anyway, that's enough from me. Hopefully that was of use. Thank you very much for watching. Please, please, please do like, subscribe, and share. Please particularly subscribe because, why not? That's what all the cool kids do. And if you want to be a cool kid, you've got to subscribe to ATP Geopolitics. It's written in stone somewhere, in a pyramid or something. Anyway, thank you. Take care. Bye.